Alone in the Arctic Night, The Simpson Storm Chapter 1, The Dream Expedition. In 2015, seasoned adventurer Leo Mitchell set out to fulfill a lifelong dream, to cross the remote Finnmark Plateau in Arctic Norway on skis solo. A former Royal Marine survival instructor, Leo had tackled extreme environments before, but this was different. This was 300 kilometers of frozen wilderness, in the heart of winter, with no support, no resupply points, and temperatures regularly dropping to 30 degrees Celsius, 22 degrees Fahrenheit. His plan was meticulous. He would haul a 70 kilogram sled, a pulk, containing his tent, stove, food for 28 days, a satellite phone, and emergency beacons. His route would take him through vast snowfields, over frozen lakes, and into wind-scoured valleys where no one lived. The journey was meant to be a test of endurance, will, and skill. It turned into a fight for his life. Chapter 2, The First Signs. On day 6, Leo noticed the sky change. The Arctic winter sun barely lifted above the horizon, but that day it vanished behind a milky haze. The air grew still, an eerie, heavy silence. He checked his weather satellite device. A storm was brewing, but forecasts in the Arctic can shift in hours. He decided to push on to a known valley where he could make camp in relative shelter. By afternoon, the wind began, a low moan that soon escalated into a screaming gale. Snow, fine as dust, blew horizontally, reducing visibility to less than 10 meters. This was the beginning of what locals later called the Simpson Storm. Winds would eventually reach 160 kilometers per hour, 100 mph. With wind chill dropping the effective temperature to 50 degrees Celsius, 58 degrees Fahrenheit. Chapter 3, The Whiteout. Leo managed to pitch his tent just as full whiteout conditions hit. Inside, the world shrank to the rustling nylon walls and the roar of the storm. For 48 hours, the tempest raged. He melted snow for water, rationed his food, and tried to rest. But on the second night, a catastrophic gust ripped the tent's main pole. The shelter collapsed on top of him. In the darkness, with fabric slapping violently, he knew, if he didn't fix this now, the tent would shred, and he would be exposed. Without shelter in such winds, hypothermia would claim him in under an hour. Fumbling with numb hands, he used a repair sleeve and skis as makeshift supports. It held, barely. But the psychological toll was immense. He was now behind schedule, his sanctuary compromised, and the storm showed no sign of relenting. Chapter 4, The Choice, Go On or Go Back. When the winds finally eased, Leo faced a brutal decision. He had covered only 1/3 of his intended route. His food calculations were based on steady progress. Now, with delays and the extra energy spent surviving the storm, his rations would run out 5 days short of the finish. Turning back meant retracing 100 kilometers over terrain he knew was treacherous. Going forward meant entering an even more remote section with fewer escape routes. After a long, cold deliberation, he chose to continue. Turning back felt like surrendering to the Arctic, he later wrote in his journal. I told myself, survive each hour, each mile. Don't think about the whole distance. Chapter 5, The Crevasse. 2 days later, traveling across what he thought was a solid snow bridge over a frozen river, the ice gave way. Leo plunged into freezing water up to his chest. His sled, still on the surface, anchored him, but the shock of the cold was paralyzing. The water wasn't deep, but getting out in heavy clothing, skis, and with the current tugging at him was a superhuman task. He remembers the desperate scramble, digging his ice axe into the bank, kicking with legs gone numb, hauling himself out inch by inch. Once on solid ground, his clothes began to freeze instantly. In minutes, he was encased in an icy shell. This was critical. If he didn't get dry, he would die. He forced himself to set up the tent, strip naked, and crawl into his sleeping bag. Using his stove inside the tent, a risk, but a necessary one, he spent hours thawing his gear, rubbing life back into his limbs. That night, he shivered uncontrollably, his body battling the early stages of hypothermia. Chapter 6, The Hunger Days. By day 18, food was dangerously low. Leo cut his daily intake to half rations, a small portion of oats in the morning, a protein bar at noon, dehydrated meal at night. His body began consuming itself. He felt weak, lightheaded, and constantly cold. Every movement, breaking camp, skiing, pulling the sled, felt like lifting mountains. One afternoon, he hallucinated. He saw a cabin in the distance, smoke rising from the chimney. He even heard voices. It took all his mental discipline to recognize it as a mirage born of exhaustion and hunger. He stopped, ate a precious piece of chocolate, and focused on his GPS, the only reality he could trust. Chapter 7, the final push. On day 24, with only 2 days of food left, he reached the final plateau. Beyond it lay a road, civilization. But between him and salvation was a steep, icy descent. His body was emaciated, his muscles trembling with fatigue. That last morning, he packed everything carefully. He remembers whispering to himself, "One last day. Just get down alive." The descent was a blur of pain and concentration. A fall here could mean a broken leg, and no one would find him in time. Finally, through a veil of snowfall, he saw it, a ribbon of grey cutting through the white. A road. He didn't cheer. He didn't cry. He simply stood there, leaning on his poles, staring in disbelief. Then he skied the last 100 meters to the roadside, collapsed to his knees, and finally allowed himself to feel it. He had survived. Chapter 8, Aftermath. Leo was found by a passing snowplow driver, who later said Leo looked like a ghost who had walked out of a past century. He was hospitalized for dehydration, severe malnutrition, and frostbite on his toes, which he later partially lost. In interviews, he said the hardest part wasn't the cold or the hunger, it was the loneliness. The Arctic, in its immense indifference, taught him that survival is not just about skills, but about the will to endure when every rational thought says to give up. He kept his sled, his repaired tent, and his journal. Today, he uses his experience to train others in wilderness survival, always repeating one lesson: respect the environment more than your ambition. And never, ever underestimate the storm.